Welcome back to the channel, you herd nerds. I have read the comments, I have listened. We are finally going to do a VFR navlog. And we are going to be doing a paper VFR navlog. Now, I know, y'all all have iPads now. Doing a paper VFR navlog might not seem modern. You might be sitting here going, "Cheese Pilot, you're such an old curmudgeon stick in the mud. Why we gotta do paper navlogs if I've got the technology? Come on, Grandpa, join us in the 21st century." The amount of times that a paper navlog has saved my butt is, well, it's more than I'd like to really admit, if I'm going to be honest. Doing a bunch of my flight instruction in Arizona, the amount of times that, well, not necessarily this iPad, but an iPad has just went, "Yo, man, it's hot, I quit. Do you, boo-boo." Even getting my airplane home, like me flying my airplane home, my iPad, my smartphone, my GoPro, all said, "Nah, it's too hot. I'm done playing this game," and shut down. I probably wouldn't have been able to get that thing home, at least not in a reasonable time frame, if I would have purely been relying on an iPad. Now, of course, if it's outside your personal minimums to fly in temperatures in which your iPad can't handle it, that's completely reasonable. But it's still a good idea to know the basics of how to actually do a paper or handwritten navlog. But before we get into that, I want to thank Nearstream. They sent over these nice little lav mics, a whole set of them actually, so that we could get some nice audio for this video, because I couldn't do this video with the nice Rode mic in the office. I needed the space out here in the kitchen, and it wouldn't really be possible to get decent audio to actually do this without Newer. So I'm gonna try and put something in the description in case you're looking for some lav mics. But beyond that, let's get into this cross-country planning. So we've got our paper navlog right here. We're gonna put that off to the side for now, and we're gonna make some notes. We're gonna scribble on some stuff on this nice TWA Hotel pad with a nice TWA Hotel pencil. Not sponsored, but hey, TWA. No, I'm kidding. So we are going to be going from Oshkosh down to Monroe, and you might be thinking, "Cheese Pilot, isn't that the wrong direction? Shouldn't we be going from Monroe to Oshkosh? Like, Oshkosh is the better place, isn't it?" Actually, Monroe has cheese days. Yes, you heard that. Cheese days. Days in which they celebrate cheese. So yes, we are going to go from Oshkosh down to Monroe for the cheese days. There are multiple days of them. I love it. Google it. I forget exactly when the days are. But let's go into our actual route. Initially, I like to just kind of put my plotter between my 2 points, between my 2 airports, and just draw a nice kind of like not very hard or any kind of line. Just Now what this does is it kind of helps me focus in the area in which I'm going to be planning, right? Instead of going off whichever way, trying to find cool points to go look at, it helps me stay kind of linearly focused in the area that I'm going to be operating in. It also shows me what airspace I might need to be concerned about. So of course we're leaving Oshkosh, that's a Delta airspace. We need to have two-way communication, and that's about it for Delta. Well, we also need ADS-B out, I believe. But this is not a airspace lesson. This is cross-country flight planning lesson. So we're going to be going from Delta, and it looks like if I just go straight, I'm going to be punching through a Charlie as well, and then down to Monroe. But you can probably see that I've already got a little bit of a route planned out. From Oshkosh, there's not really a whole lot of points for us to be looking for unless we kind of want to go straight south or go over to this lake. But given that that lake might not actually be a lake sometimes, I decided it'd probably just be better for us to go down this way, and between Fairwater Mountain and the Fond du Lac Airfield is probably going to be my first point. I can also track outbound on this radial. It looks like that would be the 180-190-202-205 radial. So I can kind of scribble that on my sectional. Remember, sectionals, they're disposable. They're paper. Scribble on them, right? So I'm going to write that little radial there, kind of pointing me where I'm going to be going. Then from there, it looks like my next point might be again, heading the appropriate direction instead of veering off. I'm going to try and put the Waupun Memorial Airport or Hospital, correction, off of my side, or the Waupun Private Airport, pretty much the town of Waupun off of my left side. And then I'm going to go straight south to start avoiding this Charlie airspace, because I don't know if I'm ever going to actually get cleared into this airspace, so I'm just going to plan around it. And it doesn't really put me that far out of my way either. So then I'm going to go straight south to Beaver Dam. Then from Beaver Dam, I'm going to go to Columbus. These ones are pretty close together. I should be able to see these points from each other. So then Columbus, Waterloo. From Waterloo, looks like I'm going to go to Staunton or Private Airport, Matson. And then going to come down here to Evansville. And then Evansville, I should be able to see the town of Monroe, maybe even the beacon from the airport of Monroe. But I've got all these little flags pretty much following my way down there. And these are all visual waypoints. These are all charted on a sectional saying I should be able to see these from an airplane. Awesome. So now that we've got our full route planned out, what altitude am I going to climb up to? So I'm up here in Wisconsin. There's not really a whole lot of elevation for me to really be concerned about. But I do want to get to an altitude that makes it easy for me to see all of my points. So I'd say 6,500 would be a little high. There's not any elevation. It's going to take us a while to get up to that altitude. So we can't do 5,500 because we're going westbound. Remember, west is even, east is odd. So I'm planning for 4,500. Now, I don't have a whole lot of weather to work with right now because this is just kind of a theory flight plan right now. So I'm planning for pressure altitude between these two numbers. I'm also planning with a temperature of possibly 6 degrees. Looks like my climb indicated airspeed is going to be about 73. My rate of climb to this altitude is going to average between 600 and 500 feet per minute. Now, I'm coming from a pressure altitude of roughly 1,000 feet because field elevation at Oshkosh is 809. And so I'm starting at 1,000. Here's my starting point. I am going up to 4,500. So I'm going to average between these two. Looks like that's going to be about 7. Between these two, looks like that's going to be about 1.7. And then average between these two, looks like that's going to be about 9. And then I'm going to subtract my starting point from my averaged out finishing point. So 1 minus 7 turns into 6. 0.4 minus 1.7 turns into 1.3. Then 9 minus 2 turns into 7. Now that is all my time, fuel, and distance it's going to take me to get from a pressure altitude of roughly 1,000 to a pressure altitude of roughly 4,500. Now I can start putting stuff on my nav log. Now, I know this isn't white paper. I ran out of white paper, so this is all resume paper I had from when, you actually handed in paper resumes. And I haven't used it all. So I'm not going to go buy more paper because I've got nice paper right here. So let's write down all of our waypoints. We're going from Oshkosh, then our top of climb. So where is our top of climb actually going to be? We need to try to measure that out based on the numbers we figured out right here. Okay, so it looks like my time when it comes to my climb is going to be 6 minutes, so I can write that down there in ETE for estimated time en route. Looks like my fuel burn is going to be 1.3. Then it looks like my distance is going to be 7. Now all of this is based off of 0 wind. So when we actually start putting our wind into this, we're going to adjust those numbers. So maybe write them a little lighter so that you can erase them easier. Now let's get our course, our direction along this route. How do we get our course? And we're actually going to write that right here in true course. We are going to take our fancy plotter, and we are going to plot we're going to line it up with the route that we have scribbled on. And then we are going to slide it along that route until this little dot in the middle lines up with one of these vertical lines. I think it's a latitude line. Yeah, because longitude is like, no, latitude. Either way, we're going to line it up with a vertical line. And put the dot over the vertical line and make sure that our plotter is lined up. Then we're going to read off of the top of it. Now, obviously we're not going north, so it's not going to be 030. We are going kind of southwest. So 210 makes more sense to me, and you can even see I kind of extended the line. So 210 is our true course from Oshkosh to our first waypoint of the little mountain and Fond du Lac, and our top of climb is going to be 7 miles along that route. So we're going to put our 210, and then let's measure 7 miles to see if we can get kind of a fix where our top of climb might be. Make sure you're measuring with the right side of your plotter. You've got a sectional side and a whack side. The whack side is whack, so use your sectional side because it's not whack. And we'll put the black line on our route, and then we'll find 7 miles. That's 6, that's 7. Looks like our top of climb is going to be right around the Fun Air Airport. So, top of climb, Fun APT. Awesome. Then from Fun Airport to our next waypoint, which is going to be a little mountain. So I'm going to draw a little picture of a mountain. I'm also going to put the elevation 1315 so that I can identify it, and I can also just put in, FLD left. Just telling me like, hey, where am I looking for these fixes? What am I actually looking for? And this one should be the exact same course of 210. Now, I've got my first 2 waypoints here. I still need to figure out how fast I'm going to go. So I am going to need my airspeed calibration chart next. Because if you remember, our time, fuel, and distance to climb chart only gave us indicated airspeed. My E6B doesn't know what indicated airspeed is. It doesn't know what calibrated airspeed is. It only knows what true airspeed is. But I can use my E6B to change calibrated airspeed to true airspeed. And that's what we're about to do. But I first need to get my indicated airspeed to calibrated airspeed. So I'm looking at about a 73 for my indicated airspeed, which is going to be roughly between 70 and 80. And then between 70 and 78 for my calibrated airspeed. So I'm just going to guesstimate it and knock off 1 knot. So I've got a calibrated airspeed of 72. Okay? Now, what do I do with that information? Well, I'm going to find my E6B. And I am going to plan on a temperature, as I said, of about 6,000 with a pressure altitude of roughly 5,000-ish. So, if we look right here, hopefully it focuses, you've got your pressure altitude correction window. So I'm going to have my pressure correction. I've got my airspeed correction window. All right. So I've got my pressure altitude. I'm going to put it right down here. It's going to be roughly 5,000. And I'm going to put that across from my temperature, which is going to be roughly 6. So it's going to be like right around there. All right. You see it? Probably not. You see it now? Hopefully. Okay, you see what I'm talking about? I've got my temperature down there on the bottom, or my pressure altitude down there on the bottom, my temperature up here in this upper window, and now I am going to read my calibrated airspeed versus my indicated airspeed. So I've got a calibrated airspeed, as I said, of 72, which is going to be on the inner scale. So 72, right about there, and on the outer scale is going to be my true airspeed. So it looks like it's going to be roughly 73. A true airspeed of roughly 73. So let's write that in. 73. Awesome. Now, what do I do with those numbers? What do I do with a true airspeed? What do I do with a true course? Well, I can't really do anything with it until I know my winds. I looked up my winds. They are roughly 280 at 1.3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the directions on the top of the E6B. Don't be afraid to read the directions. I read the directions on the top of these things pretty much every time I use it. So I'm going to set my wind direction under the true index. My wind direction is 280. Awesome. Now I am going to count up from the metal grommet the air speed, the actual wind velocity, which is going to be roughly 13. So I'm going to count up 10, then another 3. Looks like the point is going to be right about there. Maybe a marker would work better, but there's a point. I hope you can see it. Then I am going to set my true course of 210, like I wrote down earlier when I, used my plotter. I'm going to set my true course of 210 under the true index, and then I'm going to put my little mark on my true airspeed. My true airspeed was 73, so I'm going to pull that down to 73. Looks like my ground speed is going to be roughly 69. Awesome. Now, let's continue on to figure out my true heading with my wind correction angle, okay? So, if the wind is to the right, as you can see, if it's to the right, I'm going to add it. As you can see, my grommet is to the right, and it's over here on this 10-degree line. So I am going to add 10 degrees to my true course, which is going to give me a true heading of 220. Awesome. Now, my airplane has a G1000, so it's not going to have any deviation, but I do have to worry about my variation. I do have to worry about the difference between magnetic heading and true heading. And if I look on my sectional, I should see a long purple line, long dashed purple line. And if I look right up here at the top, it is showing me 3 west, right there. Now, west is best. That's just a little mnemonic I use. I don't really, whatever. It's just a little mnemonic. So what that means is I'm going to add this 3 to my true heading to get my magnetic heading. So I'm going to go +3, get my true heading to magnetic heading, which is 223. Then, since I have a nice fancy airplane with no magnetic deviation, I'm just going to cross that out. So I've got a compass heading, which is what's going to be on my heading indicator, which is what I am going to read off of my airplane's panel of 223 once I climb up out of Oshkosh. As I climb out, I'm going to try to turn to a heading of 223. So I'm going to go through and do the rest of these legs, and I guess follow along, see if you get the same numbers I do. I almost forgot. We have to talk about our cruise performance. Now that we have reached our top of climb, we are now getting to cruise. I am choosing about a 4,000 pressure altitude, about a 2,500 RPM cruise, which is going to give me a 69% max continuous power, true airspeed of 115, and a gallons per hour of 9.5. Awesome. True airspeed, let's write it down on our true airspeed block. And I'm pretty much going to maintain that true airspeed the rest of my route. But I do want to write my gallons per hour over here. And again, I'm going to maintain that gallons per hour roughly throughout the entire route. Gallons per hour goes in the gallons per hour section. Awesome. So let's do this next one. Get our ground speed, get our estimated fuel burn, and then I'll let y'all work, and then we'll kind of speed this up, work through it together, see if we come up with the same numbers at the end. So we've got our true airspeed of 115. So remember, we're going to put our little mark, or we're going to put our true course under the true index. We're going to put our little wind mark on the airspeed that we plan on flying, which is 115. So it gives us a ground speed of 110 and a wind correction angle of 5. Awesome. So 5. So it gives me 215. Then +3. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, 218. I have no deviation. So 218 is going to be what I read off of my screen with a ground speed of 110. What did we say our distance was? Let's go ahead and measure it from the Fun Airport down to our Fond du Lac. Make sure we're on the right side. That looks like it's going to be another 7 miles. Awesome. So we're going to write our 7 miles in there. So now we've got a ground speed of 210 with a distance of 7 miles. So we're going to set 210 on our E6B, correction, 110, which is going to be that 11, right? Just imagine there's a 0 there. Then we're going to find our distance on the outer scale. Our distance is 7 miles. Let's find a 7 that agrees with us. So I like that 7. And it looks like it's going to take us about 3.8 minutes, all right, or 3 minutes and 50-ish seconds. Round up to 4 minutes so that we have a better, so that we're on the conservative side, okay? So we'll call that 4 minutes. Now, if we're burning 9.5 an hour, let's put, again, our little triangle on 9.5. Then our total gallons is going to be on the outside. Our time is going to be on the inner side. So let's find a 4 that agrees with us. Looks like it's going to be 0.7 gallons. Again, rounding up, being conservative. So now that we've gotten one leg done, I'm going to run through the rest of them. Let's see if we come up with the same numbers. If you don't come up with the same numbers, let me know what happened in the comments, or let me know what you came up with, and I'll try to see what happened, and we'll try to correct it. All right? I'm just going to place it. All right, so now we've got our nav log pretty much all filled out. So compass headings along the route, we're looking at 223, 218, 218, 188, 235, 188, 216, and 212 with a final of down to Monroe. Let's figure this one out together because I forgot, given that it's at the bottom. So we got 237 true index. We put it on wind speed on 115. So that looks like a +4. So it looks like 241 plus the 3 for the variation. Looks like 244. I'm in a fancy airplane with no deviation. So 244 with a compass. Heading. All right. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. As I said, please don't hesitate to, leave something in the comments if this isn't making sense, if these numbers aren't making sense to you. I, of course, always went on the conservative side and rounded up when it came to the fuel burn. I would rather land with more fuel than I planned, especially at this stage of my training, than landing with less than I planned, right? Once you start getting into bigger airplanes, you have to start worrying about landing overweight. Sure, we want to make sure that we're as accurate as possible so we don't accidentally end up overweight at our airport of intended landing. Now make sure, of course, fill out all of this stuff off to the side, right? You want to make sure you get your departure frequency. So Oshkosh, let's fill out that section as well. ATIS at Oshkosh looks like it's 125.9. We've got a ground frequency. We'd have to look that up in the AFD, or technically the chart supplement. Tower looks like it is 118.5. Departure frequency, I'm not seeing anything on this chart showing me a departure frequency. Again, we'd look up that in the chart supplement. CTAF, not applicable. Flight service, I think I could fly into flight service around here. Yeah, I've got an RCO right there of 1225, so I could talk to them if I needed to. Field elevation of 809. Same thing with our destination down here in Monroe. We've got an AWOS as opposed to an ATIS of 118,375. KEFT. There's no tower, there's no approach, there's no ground. There is a CTAF of 123.05. And looks like the closest RCO might be, or flight service station might be this 12265. Field elevation, we're looking at 1086. Now, Monroe has a field elevation of 1086. Pattern altitude, most likely going to be 2100. We could check the chart supplement just to make sure. But we're planning to get down from this 4,500 down to 2,100, hopefully about 2 to 3 miles away from the airport. So if I plan on about a 500 foot per minute descent, which is a pretty normal descent rate, I need to get, or I have, if I am planning for a 500 foot per minute descent, and I'm going from 4,500 down to 2,100, I have about 2,500 feet to descend, which means 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. I'm going to be descending about 5 minutes out. And if I've got a ground speed of 105, I'm going to set that right there, ground speed of 105, about 5 minutes out. So find a 5. Looks like it's going to be about 9 miles out, about 10 miles out from Monroe is where I want to start descending. So it looks like about 5 miles past, or plus 5 miles, is my top of descent from Evansville. If I plan on descending at 500 miles, or correction, 500 feet per minute from 4,500 down to 2,100. Of course, any notes as applicable that you would find appropriate, like, hey, avoid Charlie, I don't know, maybe even look up the frequency for this MOA right here, since we are going to be clipping the corner of it, so Volk East MOA. So if I look over, where's it at? There they are. Volk South, Volk West, where's Volk East? Volk East. Looks like it's at 8,000 feet, so it's not even a concern for us. If it was a concern, it would be Minneapolis Center. All right? Now, last little bit of advice. Fold up your sectional so that it's easy to manage in the airplane. I'd probably fold it up just about like this, right? So that when I'm done with this route, open it up, fold it back over, I've got this section, okay? Make it a little bit easier to manage in the airplane. There's your nav log, and here's your E6P. So again, let me know if you have any questions about how to fill out a nav log. Maybe if y'all ask, maybe we'll do this route in Microsoft Flight Sim to show that these numbers will actually get you to where you plan on going. But, as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you get notified on whether it's educational content, seaplane adventures, mock check rides, and as always, keep it cheesy.